afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to the afternoon session of the 2 induction of Cohort 6.0 to Techie program. We want to believe you've been having a wonderful time learning and developing capacity through, even as our faculty takes us through the various sections of the program. It's been very wonderful from yesterday having OJ to Blessing. This morning we've had Tosin and Timmy, we've had Bolanle and Leo share insightful thoughts that will help us thrive in this our journey in becoming sound professionals in the various spaces we've registered for. So not to waste much of our time, I want to encourage us to brace up. It's going to be another time of learning. It's going to be another great time of learning, and we have on our schedule, on our list, some very wonderful resource personnel, and they will be sharing good thoughts, solid thoughts with us today. And to start off the session is today is Olaniyi Ajayi. Olaniyi Ajayi will be taking us through one of the technical bits of the course, preparing us even as we fully settle in. It's going to give us it's going to open our minds to understand certain things as regarding data engineering. So you can use the chat room to welcome our facilitator for this session, Mr. Olaniyi Ajayi. Can you hear me, Mr. Olaniyi? Good afternoon.
I can hear you, Victor. Thank you so much.
Great. It's good to have you with us. So I'll just hand over the session to you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Like Victor introduced, my name is Olaniyi Ajayi, and I lead the cloud and data engineering function at Secure Intelligence. So today I'll be taking us through data engineering 10,000 feet, and I want to believe that yesterday we had a session on cloud engineering 10,000 feet. So I'll be banking on the fact that you guys know and understood what we meant by 10,000 feet. Okay. But before I start, I'm just going to, turn on my video so that you guys can put a face to the name. Okay. So let me know if you can see my video. You can just do a thumbs up if you can see my video. Right, fantastic. Thank you. So I'm going to be turning it off now for the sake of, of bandwidth. Thank you so much, everyone. So today we are going to be talking about data engineering, and like I mentioned, 10,000 feet is just for us to have an overview of what data engineering is all about, right? This is not really to take us down in depth into what data engineering is. So we just be dwelling on the surface. And on the call here, we have about 134 attendees. So I would believe that out of this number, there will be some people who are, who have some experience in data engineering, right? Maybe a little. There will be some people who have done a little bit of data science, machine learning, etc. on this call, right? So don't feel like this session is not for you, right? This session is for everyone, because as you are here with some experience, there are also some other people on the call who don't really have as much experience as you have, right? So this is just to keep all of us at the same base so that we can grow all together. All right, Victor, next slide, please. Thank you. So on this call, we'll be talking about the roles of a data engineer. Of course, we talk about what data engineering is all about, right? So along the line, we talk about the roles and responsibilities of a data engineer, and then we quickly um, talk about one or two things on skill sets that are required for a data engineer to have, right? If you want to call yourself a qualified data engineer, what are the technologies that you need to be aware of, right? What are the recent trends in data engineering that you need to be aware of, right? So we will just be doing a quick overview of all of this so that we are able to keep up with time. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we're starting with data engineering 4 Vs, right? But before I dwell into data engineering 4 Vs, what exactly do we mean when we say data engineering, right? What is data engineering? I'm very sure most people on the call here we understand data when we talk about data, right? And every one of us, we use our phone every day. We interact with applications every day. We interact with one form of data every day, right? And then we produce one or more data every day. Either you want to agree with me or not, right? But generally, data engineering involves, the design, development, the maintenance, just the design, development, and maintenance of infrastructures that handles data, right? Infrastructures that can process data efficiently. Okay, so talking about data management, right? So data engineering is more about focusing on the technical aspect of data management. So how do you manage your data? How do you move them from one point to another? How do you transform them? How do you process them, right? That's generally is what data engineering is all about, right? But why do we need to talk about the 4 Vs? Okay, so we will get to that as we go on in the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to be starting with the first V, which is volume. Earlier, I mentioned that every one of us have produced data. In fact, think about when you started your day to day, right? You have produced one form of data or the other, right? You have, logged in on your WhatsApp, you have chatted up your friends, right? You have logged in on your Facebook, you have put a like on some posts. You've logged in on Instagram, interacted, watched some videos, maybe you are even on TikTok, right? You've created some content about yourself on YouTube, etc., right? All these are what are referred to as data, right? And the rate at which we create them, right? The rate at which we create them is getting very, very high. Now I'm diving into velocity, right? But because of that rate, it increases the volume of the amount of data that are being generated. So I sit in my house or I wake up and then I pick my phone, I start chatting, I start watching some content, I start uh, leaving some likes, some comments on Facebook, on Instagram, etc. Right? I start doing that. I am creating data by doing so, right? And we have about 100 plus people on this call. So imagine 100 plus people doing that in the morning, afternoon, and evening and night, right? We are creating a large amount of data. Now that is just 100 plus people on this call, right? Now you think about the population of uh, of the world right now, right? And then you think about those people doing the same thing daily. So you agree with me that they are creating a very large amount of data, and it means that the world data repository will be very, very large and very, very, um, very, very raw. It will contain a lot of raw data, right, that are yet to be processed. Okay, and then velocity. So I mentioned earlier, I wake up, I do this. In the afternoon, I do this. In the night, I do this, right? In fact, I can say that almost throughout the day, I do this. As I'm talking to you on the call right now, I am creating some form of data, right? Either you like it or not. I have clicked on a web browser link. I have created some form of data. I have dropped some of my cookies around. So probably the owner of the website might be able to, track my usage using all of those cookies. And when I say cookies, of course, I'm still talking about data. Okay, so I'm moving around, I'm creating fingerprints all around. I'm generating data all around. Anytime I take my phone, anytime I carry my laptop, and the same thing for you also. You do this every day, right? And you don't even know it. You are generating data. And the rate is so high because we do it frequently. You don't even bother about the speed at which you even generate data anymore. So that is what brings us to velocity, the rate at which we actually generate this data. So you combine that with the volume, you'd actually realize that, or you expect that the volume of the data that would currently exist in the world will be so large, so large. People creating content every day, right? And then the veracity. This data that we generate, is this data reliable and representative? Is it? So I mentioned earlier that I pick my phone, I visit a website, I drop some cookies around on the website, right? I visit other website, I drop cookies. I keep doing that all over. Now, what would they be able to do with that data? Now, you might think that, oh, that is irrelevant, right? Or maybe you visit the website and they say you need to accept cookies or you manage cookies. And you'll be like, it doesn't matter, let me just accept everything, right? So you are dropping your fingerprints all around. Now, what will they be able to do with this data? They will be able to do some analytics, which is actually the goal of every data, right? That you are able to do some analytics and then draw some insight from this data, right? So is the data representative? Maybe not all of them, right? But a lot of organizations are able to create their application journeys in such a way that the data that you generate is actually reliable, right? The data that you generate is actually uh, representative. They can actually make use of it and then use it to drive more revenue for themselves. Okay, and then they probably created some uh, data management around it, maybe employed some data stewards to make sure that the data that is being generated onto their platform is actually of high quality and is usable. Okay, so this data can also be of different varieties, right? So you pick up your phone, you text, you generate some text data, right? You send videos, you create video content, you create voice notes, you drive your car around, your car sends some sensor data to data centers, etc. Right? You use your phone also sends some sensor data to data warehouses, right? So this data is not something um, it's not something static, right? It is of different varieties. It can be in the text form, it can be in audio, it can be in whatever form that you don't even know about, right? So depending on how uh, the the platform on which you are actually generating that data on thinks that is going to be useful for them, they will collect that data in that format and they will make use of it. Okay. So because of these four V's, because of the volume, the velocity, the veracity, and the variety of the data, this is actually the reason why we need to do data engineering. And if you are generating this variety of data and at a very high velocity, you agree with me that we can't you can't say that we are going to be processing or we are going to be extracting this raw data in the same way. We are going to be using the same technique to actually deal with all of this data because they are in different formats. They are of different varieties, right? So it is very important that we do data engineering, and that is where data engineers, that is where they actually perform some of their most of their functions, right? And they are responsible. I'm talking about data engineers now. Data engineers are responsible for building data pipelines, data warehouse, and majorly data processing systems, right? And in between is where you have some collaborations with data scientists, analysts, machine learning engineers, etc., right? And the role of the data engineer in that space is to ensure the availability of data and the quality. Okay, so next slide, please. Thank you. So, thank you. I'm going to be dwelling more on the role and responsibilities here, right? And like I mentioned, the data engineer is responsible for building data pipelines, data warehouses, and data processing systems. And if you take a look at the definition you have in front of you, it says a data engineer is a technical person. I would like to dwell more on that. A data engineer is a technical person. Very important. You need to take note of that. Okay, so that as you go along in your career, right, as a data engineer, you will not be caught off guard, right? A data engineer is a technical person. You need to be a technical person. So when I say technical person, and if you remember my previous definition, data engineers are responsible for building pipelines, right? Data warehouses, etc. Right. So if you take your conventional understanding of engineers that build pipelines, right, that build houses, etc., you also agree with me that they are technical people, right? They don't just stand and then they say, "Oh, put this. This is how you should put this. This is how you should put that." They go on the field and they actually execute. They make use of resources that are required to build pipelines, required to build houses, required to build reliable systems. And then they make sure that the systems, the warehouses, the pipelines are actually set up. Okay, so they are technical people. Same applies to a data engineer. A data engineer is a technical person, right? And this person is responsible for architecting. Okay, so you are also an architect as a data engineer. So you are responsible for architecting. If you want to build a pipeline, you don't just, go on the field and then you start stacking the pipes together and then, start laying them all around. You need to sit down and plan what you want to build. Okay, you need to plan every step of what you want to build. So they are responsible for architecting, building, testing, and maintaining the data system. Very important. And these are all roles of a technical person. Okay, and I'm going to be dwelling on four major roles here, four major roles and responsibilities of a data engineer. And the first one is get data. So I have used get data here, right? But on a good day, on other presentations, I would prefer to make it more technical. But for the sake of people that are not so technical on the call, you understand the meaning of get data, okay? And for people that are technical, we talk about data ingestion, right? How do you ingest data from a particular source or from different sources? How do you get data from multiple sources and maybe combine them into one, and try to do some feature extractions and, you know, create a pipeline of data that actually makes sense. And data ingestion, right? When we talk about data ingestion, we'll be talking about you retrieving data from multiple sources, right? And you agree with me, data can be generated from multiple sources, right? Data can originate from multiple sources. The source can be a database, it can be an API, it can be maybe via web scraping. A lot of people will be so familiar with web scraping, right? Anybody that is interested in data engineering must have heard about the term web scraping. Okay, it can also be, the source can be from maybe log files, can be from sensors or from social media platforms, right? So you can have multiple sources where you have data coming all together, right? And part of data ingestion can also be you can also call out data extraction, right? And like I mentioned the other time, you can be in a situation where you have to gather data from multiple sources, right? Where you gather data from different sources into a centralized logging system, right? Or maybe into a, let me use a layman term, into a centralized storage. Okay. It can also be via a real-time channel, right? And when I say real-time, I refer to continuous uh, processing of data as it arrives. So as you are generating that data, it is immediately being processed, right? As the data is being generated, work is being done immediately on it. Okay. So it means that from real-time streaming, right, from streaming sources, you can generate real-time insights and analysis on your data. Okay. So this is very, very important that you understand that as a data engineer, you can't say that, okay, because you're working in a place and then they've been retrieving data majorly from a database. It means that data should not, it means that your role, that is the bulk of what you should be able to perform as a data engineer, right? Because that is not the only source. There are other sources, there are databases, etc., right? Also, let's talk about transport, right? So when you try to retrieve this data engineers are also responsible for how the data moves around in the pipeline, right? How does the data move around in the pipeline? And this is where we talk about, I'll bring in a term here, ETL, right? Some of you must have heard about ETL. If you've heard about ETL, you can, put a thumbs up on this call, okay? So ETL, very, very important, right? And when we talk about ETL, I'm talking about extract, transform, and load. In fact, it can also be ELT, right? It can be extract, load, and transform, depending on what you are working on, right? And these are processes that they are used to integrate, transform, and load data from multiple sources into a destination, right? Or you can call it a target system. So your target system or your destination can be a database, it can even be a data warehouse, it can be a data lake, etc. Right? So very, very important that you understand that. And yeah, so I would say that I've talked about store data while I was talking about transport, right? Because when you transport data, you want to put them in a landing zone. Where does the data land? In as much as it is not a streaming data. Even if it is streaming data, right? As you are analyzing the data, maybe you want to keep the data somewhere for maybe future analysis, right? So we talk about store data. So very important as part of the role of a data engineer, you are going to be getting data, transporting data, and storing that data. And you are also going to be transforming that data. In fact, transform does not have a permanent place where it sits, right? It can sit between transport and store. In fact, it can even sit in multiple places. It can sit between get data and transport, right? So if you get data and it is not in the format that you want it, you want to transform it before transporting it, right? So when you store it, if it is being needed in different formats, you want to transform it also before it gets to the destination, right? So transform can sit anywhere on this pipeline. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So I'm trying to move fast a little bit, right? So I'm going to be talking about skill set that are required for a data engineer, right? So if you want to call yourself a data engineer, what are the skill sets that you need to understand, right? What are the basic concepts that you need to understand? You need to be armed with. Okay, so programming is number one. right? You need to be able to do some scripting as a data engineer, because when you try to retrieve data from somewhere, you need to do that. Sorry, you do that via scripting, right? Maybe you want to retrieve data via an API, right? How do you do that? Do you, do you just recite incantation and then the data comes? No. So it is what is being used to interface with those applications is called programming, right? And then you need to be able to do a bit of programming. You need to understand some basic programming concepts like object-oriented programming. Okay, so very very important that you understand that. And now I have Python here, right? Python as a scripting language, but it is not limited to Python. Okay, it can be other programming languages. It can be other scripting languages, right? Very important. So it can be Golang, it can be Python, it can be JavaScript, it can be anything, right? And then you also need to understand some open source frameworks, right? So there are some open source frameworks that are used in data processing, and some of you must have heard about Spark. You must have heard about Hadoop, right? So these are some of the frameworks that are used in processing heavy data. You must have heard about Hive, etc., right? So these are some frameworks that can be used to handle data. And if you've not heard about it and you've been doing data engineering, maybe probably you've not been interacting with big data as much, right? If you've been interacting with big data, you would have heard about some of these frameworks: Apache Hadoop, Apache Spark, Apache Kafka, Airflow, etc. Right? Most of the Apache frameworks, right? Apache Beam, Presto, all of these, right? You must have heard about this. And one other thing that is important, and I mean a skill that I think you should have as a data engineer, is understanding of cloud infrastructure, right? Preferably cloud data infrastructure. Okay, so your familiarity with cloud platforms, right, can can quickly boost your. I mean, can give you the enablement to be able to build a lot of data pipelines quickly, right? So it is very important that you have some understanding of cloud engineering. And thank God that you guys did cloud engineering 10,000 feet yesterday. So I want to believe that you understand cloud engineering already, right? So very important. And another reason for this is that most of the frameworks that you will be using or you might be using for data processing, most of them will actually be hosted somewhere. Okay, why some organizations prefer hosting their stuff, their applications on site? Majority of organizations are moving into the cloud now, and very important that you understand deployment process on the cloud and some data infrastructures on the cloud, right? So this is very very important. And databases, databases it is important you understand databases. What we mean by SQL, NoSQL, GraphQL, and all of those things. It is important that you understand databases. And there are some skill sets that you need to understand that are not called out here. So these are not all of the skill sets uh, that you would say that a data engineering should be limited to, right? So there are a lot of them. Once you open yourself to, doing research, actually finding out what is actually required. For instance, API. It is very important for you as a data engineer to understand APIs. It can't be overemphasized. Very important that you understand APIs. What are APIs? How do you build APIs? In fact, you should start your journey from building APIs, because that is that might likely be the first interaction that you will have with maybe getting data from sources, right? And some of us already have that interaction already. You pick your phone, you use some applications, etc. You are calling APIs. So as a data engineer yourself, you can qualify to be a back-end engineer, right? An API engineer. Okay, so these are very, very important. And I would like to stop here because of time. But if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I might take them after the next session because we are out of time. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Mr. Olaniyi. Can we just use the platform to say thank you to our facilitator? I mean, in the short time, he's done so much to compress very vital information um, to us all. I understand that many of us have questions, and we would want him to speak to certain technicalities. You know, this is just an insight of what the course, of what the program is going to entail when you get onboarded from after this induction program. We would also take some of your questions just after our next speaker also. So just stay put. We can see your questions, and yes, we understand your concerns. So thank you very much, Olani. We'll move on to our next speaker. Can I get the slides of our next speaker up, please?
Hi. Okay, please go ahead. I thought you wanted to project.
All right, just a moment.
Yeah.
Just a moment,
Yeah,
so I just welcome you proper. All right, so
okay,
our next speaker is Mabuya Magagula. I hope I got that right. Pardon me. He is a highly experienced senior technical instructor at AWS with a strong background in cloud computing and technical training. He has diverse backgrounds spanning from technical training, cloud computing, software engineering, innovation and management, and project leadership, with skill sets extending to various areas, including databases, distributed systems architecture, code development on Lambda. He is known for his excellent problem-solving skills and a talent for simplifying complex concepts. Mabuya has successfully resolved critical and highly complex customer issues that span multiple AWS services. In addition to his day-to-day responsibilities, Mabuya is actively involved in leading global internal projects and contributing to team development with a global impact. He also plays a crucial role in mentoring, public presentations, and hiring, consistently raising the bar on quality. So, ladies and gentlemen of Cohort 6, can you give a resounding welcome to our next facilitator, Mr. Mabuya Magagula? All right, Mr. Mabuya, can you hear me? Can you still hear me? Good afternoon.
Hi, afternoon. I can hear you.
Great. I'll now over the session to you now. We can have your screen. We can have you put up your, share your slides on your end.
Okay, thanks. I am just going to try and do that. Okay, please do confirm if you can see the slides.
Clearly, the slides are up.
Okay, thanks very much. And I'm just gonna also put a face to the name. My name is Mabuya. Thanks for the narrative. It's really detailed. There are some things in there that also shocked me, but thank you so much for going through LinkedIn and being able to
You're welcome.
pick up all of that. Okay, great. I don't want to take your time, but the way I'm going to do this presentation is I don't really want to focus on myself. I'd really like to focus as much as I can on you. Of course, ensuring that we are pivoting around cloud and how my journey led me into AWS. My hope is certainly that whatever I share today, I would also help you in as far as achieving your goals is concerned. Okay, so I am a senior technical instructor within AWS. I didn't start out as a senior technical instructor. I just had some humble roots. And I'm just going to share some key things that helped me out as well. Now, it's actually quite important to appreciate and understand what cloud is. The previous speaker did speak about a lot of what we are going to be doing is going to be based on the cloud. Now, as you know, and as you may know, cloud would be AWS, would be Azure, for instance, would be Google Cloud Platform. So there are a couple of cloud providers, but in as far as the formal definition of cloud is concerned, cloud is really the provision of cloud computing services, which is really the on-demand delivery of IT resources over the internet. Okay, so what really does that mean? Well, in a nutshell, that just simply means that you are in a position to request services from cloud providers when you do need them, and when you certainly do not need them, you can give them back to the cloud providers, and AWS is really no different at all. Okay. So just for us to just save on bandwidth, I'll also just stop sharing my video just to respect. Okay, great. Now, Amazon Web Service, fortunately, we had an early starting as far as cloud is concerned, having started in 2006. So when you go onto our platform, what you really are going to realize is that there are a lot of services that are provided, from streaming to analytics to machine learning to storage to databases, etc., etc. So if you haven't gone onto the AWS console, this is really what it really looks like. This is really the landing page. And in as far as where all of these services that we are talking about are concerned, that you could get them categorized as follows. Okay, so if you are looking for specific services, let's say in databases, you would certainly check in databases and get a number of databases that are provided. If you're looking for services in as far as storage is concerned, you'd get those in storage. Okay, so let's certainly just unpack a couple of things. First and foremost, the provision of on-demand services, and I'd like just to bring a usual use case where perhaps you are getting started in IT, and you'd certainly want to be able to launch your first website. Now, anyone that has actually worked in an organization would know, for us to be able to do that, what we'd have to do is get a server or a computer, put it inside like a rack. Once you put it inside a rack, and then you set it up, install an operating system, you install a lot of dependencies, perhaps you're launching a PHP web server, and all of that really gets up and running in a matter of perhaps months, right? So at the very least, a month. Now, the idea in as far as AWS and other cloud providers really is concerned is you certainly want to be able to fast track that. And I'm also noticing the questions in the chat, so I'm taking note of those. So what if there was a way in which we could quickly get up and running in as far as creating our first web server is concerned? And this is certainly where cloud providers come into play. So it's actually quite important to understand where this website that you want to make is going to be sitting on. So before we get our hands dirty virtually, I'd like to not take anything for granted, but to bring up the next slide and show you how AWS is really positioned. So in AWS, we have a region, and I'm all the way down in South Africa. So there is a region in South Africa, and that region is called Cape Town. So we have a Cape Town region. Okay. Now, this Cape Town region has got what we call availability zones. So for example, let's say there was a region in Nigeria, maybe one of the availability zones would have been in Lagos, and another availability zone would have been in another major city. And of course, you have an idea why we do this. We do it for high availability because there are times, for example, when the availability zone may go down. Okay, so for example, you might have the region in Cape Town, and you'll have these availability zones in separate areas. Now, these availability zones are simply going to have data centers, and this is where your website is going to sit. Okay, so the exercise that we'll just do now, just to appreciate AWS's global infrastructure, really is we're just going to create a very, very simple website that is going to sit within these regions. Okay, so navigating back to the AWS console, some of us might be familiar with what we call EC2. And EC2 is simply a computer in the cloud. That's all it is. So because we, of course, we want to launch a website, we are going to need to have an EC2 instance or a computer in the cloud. And what we then do is we would simply launch the website. Okay. So the screen is going to load, and we are going to just go through a few of the settings. For example, we would, in this case, call this a website. Okay. And then we would choose an operating system. Okay. So in my case, I will choose Amazon Linux. Okay. And then after that, we just have to define how big this computer is going to be. And this is where you then define the gigabits, the CPUs, etc., right? Okay, so this is the capacity. Okay. And there are also a couple of settings that you do not really need to know about, but one key one that you might want to take note is you'd want to select the security of your computer that you're launching. You do not want it to be opened. So you might only want individuals to access the website and nothing else. So you select a security group. Okay, so I've already created a security group just to try and fast track things. Okay, and then we scroll all the way down. And the interesting bit is in as far as what exactly is the script that would run in order to download like the website from a repository and then run it. So there is a script that is available that I already have made. And all that we are doing in this case, in as far as Linux is concerned, I do not want to get too technical, but just what we're doing is we're downloading a web server, we're downloading a zip file of our website, unzipping it, and then we are running it. So that's all that we're doing in this case. Okay, so if I grab that particular script and I plug it in there, I'm then able to launch the website, and that website is going to launch, downloading all the dependencies and making sure that that website is able to run. Okay, so certainly it will take time for us to be able to get this up and running, maybe in a few minutes or so. So what then we will do is we will go to one that's already running, which is as follows. Okay, so this is simply the website that is running, and all that this website really does is it determines what your next job or your next path is going to be. So, for example, if I type Victor Ademola and I click submit, and then it says that Victor is destined to become a content creator. And if you just check someone else, let's check Olaniyi. got the name correct, and I click submit. And then it determines that Olaniyi is going to become an eventer. Now, why am I doing all of this? Is simply to explain how quick it is in as far as a cloud provider is concerned to be able to deploy resources so that you can do things such as machine learning, analytics, streaming data, and anything that you would generally do on premise. Okay, and all of that is going to sit inside a region, inside an availability zone, inside a data center. Okay. Now, of course, what we are certainly talking about today is AWS as a cloud provider, but at the same time, how do we then, how are we in a position to be able to get into AWS so that we could also learn, we could also be in a position to realize our dream of working for a cloud provider like AWS. Okay. Now, in as far as career paths in AWS are concerned, you might have heard of a cloud support engineer, and this is usually, not all the time, but usually the entry point into AWS. A cloud support engineer is someone that is going to be educated, capacitated, ramped up to be able to handle customer queries. For example, one of the customer queries that we might have is, my website is not up, simply put, and you would be able to then assist the customer to get that website up. Okay. Now, certainly there are a lot of other roles in as far as a cloud support engineer is concerned. You might want to be involved in analytics, which is where I started out in. You might want to be involved in networking. You might want to be involved in machine learning, in security. So there are many, many areas that you could start from in as far as a cloud support engineer is concerned. And the great thing as well about AWS is you could always then move across certain areas so that your base in as far as cloud is concerned is very, very good. So usually we normally start here becoming a cloud support engineer. Okay. You could also decide to become a technical accounts manager. And in as far as technical accounts manager is concerned, these are the individuals that manage accounts with clients, international clients. So for example, let's say we do have a telecoms in Nigeria that is on AWS. You could become a technical accounts manager in AWS and manage that account, trying to ensure that whenever there's a project or perhaps there is a blocker that telecoms company does have, they're able to contact you so that you could link them with the best individuals to help them get out of that blocker. You could become a technical trainer, which is where I am. And of course, the most common one or the most popular one is a solutions architect. Now, an AWS solutions architect simply is brought into the field to assist customers to realize what their goals are. So they would sit down with the customers and offer best practices in as far as trying to realize technical goals. For example, we just created a website at this point in time, and a solutions architect would then ask a couple of questions such as, okay, we know that your website is located here. Now, what happens if this goes down? And the solutions architect would then say, great, if that goes down, let us then have the website located there and in these data centers. And in front of the website, we would then put what is called a load balancer. And a load balancer is simply a facility that balances the load. So for example, if this particular availability zone has gone down and this website is down, we have the same website across different data centers, which means that we would route people into that website. So that would route traffic into this availability zone, or would route traffic into that availability zone, ensuring that we are always highly available and fault tolerance. So that's what a solutions architect does. It ensures that as companies are progressing towards their goal, they are doing it in a way that complies with AWS best practice. Okay, do not just have one website. Have a couple of websites that do the same thing, spread across the region, so that you are in a position to ensure that if something goes wrong in one area, perhaps a natural disaster happens, you are able to offer your customers who are accessing your website that sort of accessibility. Okay. Now, we are also quite involved in best practice and solutions architect as well, where we are. For instance, I would like to think that when you do get a computer, it is best practice to be able to patch it. It is best practice to be able to put an antivirus. It is best practice perhaps to be able to put something that is going to replicate the information that you're storing onto the cloud so that you have a copy. And this is really what a solutions architect does, looks at the environment and ensures that whatever you are building is really built according to best practice and could be able to stand against disasters. So that is what a solutions architect does. Okay. You could also decide to be a software developer engineer within AWS, and you could also decide to be a data engineer as well. Now, I just come from the analytics requirements. So this is the interview that I went through when I became a cloud support engineer for analytics. So they asked me questions on data warehousing, database, and ETL, business intelligence, networking, Linux or Windows, and software development. And there are going to be different requirements depending on the field that you are going to go into. Okay, so you want to certainly make sure, as the previous speaker spoke about, that you really become a techie in the areas, in the goals that you want to go through. Okay, so this just leads us halfway to this presentation. The reason why I am in AWS is simply because I went through an interview process, and it did not start from there. It started from a long time ago, and I'd really like to drive this next slides or these points across to you. So the AWS interview process is really as follows. There is a written assessment. You do a quiz online. Sometimes that quiz is not really given to you if it is noted that you do have some experience, but you are going to go through 1 or 2 phone screens thereafter. And in as far as phone screens are concerned, it's just an introduction into asking you technical questions. And then you go on to the on-site interview. This is supposed to be a face-to-face. It certainly was before COVID. And now we are just getting back post-COVID. So what happens is AWS is going to fly you to a certain location, or they would meet you at a certain location and conduct an on-site interview with you. And this on-site interview is conducted with 5 individuals, some of who are asking technical questions, and some of whom are asking behavioral questions. And thereafter, an offer is made. Okay, so focusing just on the on-site interview, you are going to be tested on technical queries. You are going to be tested on behavioral queries. And this is certainly what I'd like to leave with you today. Now, if you've managed to understand how we created that EC2 instance, believe it or not, you are certainly much more further than I am when I interviewed with AWS, because when I interviewed with AWS, I literally had 0 cloud experience. I did not know what cloud was. I couldn't define it. I hadn't gone onto the AWS console to save my life. At that point in time, all that I knew is really what was around the circle. Okay. So do you need really to have cloud experience to be able to go for an interview in AWS? My answer is, well, I did not have any cloud experiences. And I have interviewed hundreds of people that also did not have any cloud experiences as well. And we have also hired a couple of them as well. Okay, so what exactly do I need to know to become an employee inside AWS analytics team as a cloud support engineer? Well, all I knew was networking, software development, just a bit, DB, ETL, data warehousing, graphics designing, and some Windows administration. Yep, I didn't even know Linux at all. Okay, so this was my portfolio. And in as far as going for the interview is concerned, we are going to focus on the technical part a bit and then get to the behavioral part. Now, some of us, when we do look at our journey or our projection in as far as tech is concerned, our focus sometimes is on the salary, okay? So for example, this is quite my journey. Some of us, the reason why we might not then progress all the way up is simply because we do not want to start at this point over here, which is to work for free. I know a lot of us might be so against the concept of working for free, but in as far as working for free is concerned, there is certainly a lot of technical knowledge that you are going to get from the company or the industry that you are going to work in. Okay. Now, you might also note at this point over here in my journey, I took a bit of a salary dip. Okay, and just to explain that, I was extremely comfortable at this position. I had been there for 5 years and I needed to make a move. And the organization where I wanted to make a move to said, look, we cannot give you an increase. In fact, we will give you a salary decrease. And why am I pointing this out? Is really because sometimes in your journey, you are also going to have to take some hits so that you could realize a much bigger goal later on, okay? Now, all of this experience that I've had helped me to be able to, at the very least, land an interview with AWS, okay? So I just really want to encourage you that wherever you are in as far as the spectrum is concerned, certainly do not really focus on the amounts, okay? Focus on the end goal. If you are going to see yourself in 5 or 10 years' time, what exactly does that look like? And what are the technical skills that you are going to need in order to achieve your goals? So my encouragement is to certainly look in as far as this perspective is concerned, okay? Now, this slide does not have any salaries whatsoever. All it has is years against skills acquired, okay? And a lot of us start out with certainly doing website designing, but at the same time, we then make all our way up into our goals, whether it would be in machine learning, data analytics, systems integration, streaming, whatever it is. But in as far as your goals are concerned, I would encourage you, wherever you are in as far as your age is concerned, to certainly look at the next skill that you would want to get. So I fortunately got one promotion in AWS, and I had a very good mentor from Nigeria as well. He was a solutions architect, and I just started out my journey in AWS. And he was in the States, and I asked, could I please just talk to you? Because solutions architect may be one of the goals that I want to go into. And we did chat, and I asked him, so how did you get promoted? And he simply said, you know what, the simple way I got promoted was I was just trying to solve problems. I wasn't looking for a promotion. All I just did was just trying to solve issues that AWS was having. And fortunately, when I did do that, I realized that I qualified for a promotion and then I applied for one. But if you were to ask me if I had a promotion in mind from the onset, to be able to get more money and more income, not necessarily. All that I had when I was starting out in AWS, according to his words, was a goal to be able to learn as much as possible. Okay, so certainly my encouragement is to not really look at the money. If you are invested in your learning, invested in skills, you are certainly going to be able to get an increase in salary and in money as time goes on. That is a given. Invest in your skills, and certainly you are going to get an increase in salary and in money. So over time, I did some really funky things. For example, we had something called Swazi Gamers, which is where we had LAN parties. We brought our computers together, and as much as we thought we were playing FIFA, that wasn't the case really. What we were doing was learning about networks, right? We were learning about graphics cards and designing and animation. We were learning about Adobe Photoshop. And then afterwards, what I also then did is I realized that I loved movies. I loved watching movies. And where I was from in Swaziland, because I'm originally from Swaziland, there was no app that would show these movies. So I learned how to develop, and I showcased these movies for free because I really just loved being able to know what is coming next, instead of having to call the cinema and then ask them what movies are playing next week. Anyone could download this app. And in as far as skills can be acquired here, this taught me things like NoSQL databases. As the previous presenter was speaking about, there are different types of databases. And when you then go into challenges, you realize that this is best handled by a NoSQL database. It also taught me Android. It also taught me a couple of other skills. And this then allowed me to get hired in other organizations where I then began to do some development. What you're looking at over here is an HR system that was internally developed and saved the company that I was working about 300,000 rands worth of possible licenses. So they are currently using this right now, and this is a fully fledged performance management system used by human resource. And finally, we didn't get into analytics. I used to work with the taxman, which is the tax authority. And in the taxman, each and every month, we are accountable to the government as to how much we have collected. So as you might have already known over here, we had this following goal of about 7 million, and Swaziland is a very small country, so that is a lot of money to us. And we were over target by 5%. But this was an entire ETL pipeline that simply collected data. As the previous speaker spoke about data ingestion. You ingested data from various sources, and then we aggregated the amounts and we put that into a data warehouse. And after that, we ran queries to be able to check how well we are doing for a specific month against a specific target. Okay, so this is all about trying to get as much technical skills as possible so that when you are finally given a chance to interview at your preferred cloud provider or your preferred company, you are in the best position. So my encouragement certainly is do not let something like money or finances or working for free or doing a bit of extra time get in the way of learning another skill. So what are the tips that I can offer in order for you to improve your technical competencies? Well, tip number one is, well, if there's no salary, then work for free, of course. We have covered that. Tip number two, if there's no job, work for yourself for free, okay? Certainly be in the habit of developing a new skill. In as far as your hands are concerned, always be doing something. And that certainly is tip number three. In as much as you are developing a new skill, certainly develop a relevant skill. Do not just, for example, develop a skill that you know is quite outdated. For software developers, there is programming languages like COBOL. COBOL is a very old programming language in the 1970s and 1980s. it's no use learning that programming language. You have to be very deliberate about your time and ensure that your investment is geared towards developing a relevant skill. People are talking about ChatGPT today, right? And ChatGPT, if you've used it, you're able to accelerate your software development very, very quickly by just simply asking ChatGPT the right questions. And it's a bit scary what the future holds, but it looks like that ChatGPT is going to perform an integral role in developing software. So you should be jumping on that bandwagon and leveraging on ChatGPT to fast track your development knowledge. Okay, so be in the habit of developing a new skill. Okay, now don't just start a project, have tangible results. If you are interviewing someone, you want to know what the impact was in as far as what they are doing. So certainly have tangible results in what you're doing. Do not just say, I've made a website. What was the impact? What did it do? How much money did you make? If you did make any money, what was the user base? Did the user base increase? And all of that is important because it shows that you're someone that is very interested in as far as results are concerned. Number 5, work in small, effective teams. Okay, and for us to be able to appreciate this, I'm not really going to talk much about it, but this came from Jeff Bezos, who says, we try to create teams that are no larger than can be fed by 2 pizzas. We call them 2 pizzas team rule. And the idea here is that certainly when you have a small team, you are more effective, you collaborate more better, there are less politics, and each and every one is able to take a huge piece of the pie in as far as the work that needs to be done. Okay, so I would advise not to be quick when you are doing projects to give yourself titles like CEO or CFO or software developer. Just work in small teams geared towards getting the project off the ground. And that is certainly going to help in as far as giving you tangible results that you could talk about in the interview process. Tip number 6, keep a portfolio of what you have accomplished. Okay. And by portfolio, I don't just mean a CV. I mean, take screenshots. I mean, collect the data of the impact so that when you then talk about it to someone else, you can give them a huge picture and nothing is lost in the cracks. And that is certainly going to help you a lot. And tip number 7, get educated, get certified. That is going to be evidence that you are able to deliver on what you claim to deliver. And all of this is going to help in as far as the interview process. Now, the last part that I'd just like to go into is the technical part is one thing. The other thing that AWS looks at in detail is your behavioral competencies. For example, I'll just simply take one. Are you someone that is able to take ownership when things go right and when things go wrong? Or are you someone that always shifts the blame to someone else? And the way that they would then ask these questions is they would, in the interview, ask, tell me about a time when you had a conflict with a team member. What is the conflict and what is the outcome? And you need to be very cautious in the way that you answer that question. Certainly, there are going to be conflicts that you are going to have, but you want to make sure that in the entire time that you have had a conflict with a team member, you will also portray yourself as someone that was geared to helping solve that particular conflict. Okay. Certainly in AWS, we have what we call leadership principles, and there are 16 of them. They're just 14 on the slide because these are the most key ones for you. And you could type in Google AWS leadership principles so that you can make sure that you have an example for each one of these when you go to the interview process. Okay, so what are my 7 tips for you to improve your behavioral competencies? The first one, hard work always trumps talent and passion. So if you are someone that is talented, you'd want to make sure that you also include the hard work in the mix. If you're someone that isn't talented and you don't have, the natural aptitude for a certain area in IT, trust me, hard work is always going to get you to where you want to be. Okay. Number two, take responsibility for your shortcomings. That is very important. There are some individuals that may not have certain attributes and need to develop them. For example, for me, I'm someone that I noticed was quite agreeable with everyone, which is not good, because then if I then navigate back into AWS's leadership principles, I need to be able to have a backbone, disagree, and commit. But if I'm consistently agreeing with everyone, then that means that I certainly would not be able to voice my opinion, which would then help the team progress. Okay, so you need to look at yourself and identify what exactly are your shortcomings. Are you someone that gets agitated very quickly? Are you someone that if somebody disagrees with you, you become extremely angry at the person? So you need to take responsibility for your shortcomings in as far as your behavioral competencies are concerned. And this is very important because it is picked up in the interview process. I recall one individual I met on the way to being interviewed by AWS treated me very badly as we were going into the airport or into the plane. So we accidentally bumped into each other. And I said, "Look, man, I'm sorry." And he looked at me, he gave me the stink eye, and we did not know that we're going to the same interview. But when we landed in Cape Town and we got off the plane and we waited for the same bus, we realized that we were going to the interview. So he didn't talk to me at all throughout the journey. And in my mind, I thought, well, if AWS is very serious about their leadership principles, then certainly I think this person is not going to be hired. And that is exactly what happened. They were able to pick up that this individual had some characteristics that wasn't aligned to AWS's leadership principles. And we do have characteristics as well, but it's very important for us to be able to take responsibilities of our shortcomings and address them. If you're someone that is very shy, certainly take responsibility of that and try and get out of that shell and communicate more often. Okay, so that is tip number two. Tip number three, know the stage in your life where you are in. Okay, and this is coming from the point of view that at some points in time, as you are trying to grasp as much knowledge as possible, it is likely that you might do a bit of overtime, a bit of extra work, because you are trying to solve that deficiency. Now, the problem is I have seen some youth and some people who have just started out working being very, very deliberate about what time they start, what time they end, where their scope of work starts, where their scope of work ends, and willing to go beyond what they're hired to do to be able to go into areas that are uncomfortable, but would provide a very good learning experience. So it's very important to know that if you're starting out in the IT space, there is certainly some hard work and extra work that you are going to do. But as time goes on, as you begin to become a family member as myself, then you might push back and say, look, I need to spend this time with my family. But certainly know the stage where you are in your life, because perhaps where we are right now, our career and our work is really important, and we need to make sure that we put ourselves in the best possible light. Okay, number four, respect everyone regardless. Okay, and this is really important. Not just respect someone simply because they are in a position to provide knowledge to you, or they are working for a company that you'd want to go into. Respect the person behind you that looks up to you as well. Okay, so this one is quite self-explanatory. One key one for AWS is try and make sure that in whatever you do, in whatever you speak, you are driven by data. if you are communicating and you are disagreeing with someone, do not disagree on the basis that you do not like them, or that you want your thoughts to be heard. When you do disagree, you want to make sure that it is backed by data. And you are going to hear this a lot in AWS, that Amazon is a data-driven organization. Amazon is never going to go into, for example, an area, or launch a region, or open up a site such as a warehouse, provided the data does not back it up as being able to offer customers the necessary services that they want in that area. So Amazon is a clearly data-driven organization, and its employees as well are also driven by data. Within Amazon, in fact, it often happens that you do have employees that would disagree with their superiors, or even their superior based upon data. And that is not held against them. In fact, that is certainly encouraged, where provided the data is available, you are certainly in a position to be able to let yourself be heard at any levels within AWS. So I'd like to caution you against this part over here. And just to focus over here, you are going to be respected for it a lot. Tip number 6, do not burn bridges. Burning bridges is certainly something that you do not want to do, even if you do not like the organization that you are working in. You want to make sure that you leave it at the best possible footing that you can. And tip number 7, your reputation will always precede you. So you want to make sure that at every point in time, you are certainly doing the right thing. You are known to be someone that is workable. You are known to be someone that is a team member, because your reputation is always going to go ahead of you. And why am I mentioning all of this to you? Is simply because Amazon Web Services is able to pick up on these behavioral trends to figure out exactly what your strengths are in as far as your behaviors are concerned, and areas where you are going to require a bit of work. So when you do interview with Amazon, they are going to use the STAR interview format, as you might have learned before. And the STAR interview format simply says, when you answer the question, first of all, define the situation that you're in, describe the task, what exactly was your goal, describe the action that you took, not your group. So for example, you do not want to use the word I, sorry, we do not want to use the word we. You want to be able to clearly show what your contribution was in as far as resolving the situation, or what your contribution was in the project was concerned. And definitely always remember that there is a result at the end of a project, at the end of a situation. So certainly communicate that. So if you do have a question as follows, I'm just going to pick one. Tell me about a time when you went over and above your friend, son, daughter, or job responsibility in order to help out someone. The first thing that you'd want to give is the situation. Okay, what exactly was the situation concerned? You'd want to be able then to give the goal, which is the task. You'd want to give your actions. What is it that you did? Not what is it that your team did, but what is it that you did? And also what exactly was the result when you went over and above your job responsibility, or your friend's son or daughter, which are just other examples as well. Now, the reason why we have son, daughter here, and friend is because we do understand in Amazon that at times you might not be in a specific job at that point in time, and therefore you might have an example outside of the usual work area, and therefore you might want to give that example of a time when you went over and above your responsibilities as a friend to help out someone. And the last one, which is also pretty common, is tell me about a time you had a conflict with a teammate, and how did you approach it? You want to explain what the conflict was. You want to explain what the goal was. What actions did you take? Did you sit down with your teammates? Did you call a meeting? Did you compromise? And what the result was? Did the project progress after that? Was the project delivered? Did you decide to go separate ways? That could also certainly happen as well. Okay, so I'll just give you these parting words. In your journey, there certainly will always be storms, but you certainly want to look at the silver lining and remain positive. Always try to pursue the gold at the end of the rainbow. Okay, so whatever you decide to do in as far as pursuing your goals is concerned, you might take a salary dip, you might be laid off, you might have conflict in the organization. Things are going to happen as they always do, but certainly always look at the silver lining, the positives, and not let that get you down. Just try and continue to pursue your end goal, whatever it certainly may be. Okay, so remember as well, keep in mind, getting into AWS, the technical part is also as important as the behavioral part. So you want to make sure that you are technically competent, but at the same time, you put yourself as someone that is able to work with others. Okay, and thanks very much. I do know that there were questions, but I just want to respect the organizers and check if we are able to take a couple of questions in the chat and then proceed. Please do let me know and give me an indication if that is fine. I'm happy to continue.
Wow. Great. Yes, of course. We would entertain questions. Would have questions coming, but I must just comment. You just focus on a master class, and thank you. At some point in time, it was as though I was in a business school as a techie, because you accurately were touching the technical beats, and you were also balancing the behavioral part, and the balancing you brought to this session is so much that I just want to say indeed everyone who has participated today is grateful. All right, thank you very much once again, Mabuya. Do we have questions from Mabuya? I want to believe Olaniyi is still on this call, because there were some questions that came in from his session that we could not attend to, and we'll just take this session to ask those questions. Olaniyi, thank you very much. I see you've been trying to attempt some questions in the chat box. Thank you very much. So let me just highlight one of the questions that I see you've not answered. So someone is asking, what's the difference between a data engineer, a data scientist, and a data analyst? You might want to just unmute your mic and share your thoughts on that question. Olaniyi, can you hear me? Can anyone still hear me here, please? Hello, can anyone still hear me? Joseph, can anyone hear me?
Yes, Victor, I can hear you. I don't think Olaniyi is available. Victor, can you hear me?
Olaniyi can hear me. I can see. Oh, great. You can hear me clearly. Great. Mabuya, do you want to attempt to answer that question for us? Someone is asking, what's the difference between a data engineer, a data analyst, and a data scientist?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, great. I can hear you now.
Oh, nice. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah. So the difference between data engineering, data engineer, data scientist, and data analyst, right?
Yes, that's the question.
You want to take that again, Victor?
I'm validating. I'm saying the question is, what's the difference between a data engineer, a data analyst, and a data scientist?
All right. So I will start from a data engineer, right? So like we mentioned, a data engineer is a technical person, right? And if we talk about this in terms of data itself, I'll tell you that data engineers are the ones that worked on raw data, right? Unprocessed data, unlike data scientists and data analysts, right? So, majorly, a data scientist is the one you find uh, when analyzing data, pre-processing data, crunching data using algorithms, etc. Right? That is where you find data scientists. And there is actually a thin line between a data scientist and a machine learning engineer, right? But that debate is not for today. And for most of you that have actually interacted, that you've had some interaction with data scientists, or maybe you've done some data science yourself, right? You will agree with me that the bulk of the work is all around taking some data, doing some feature extraction, minor pre-processing, right, and then applying algorithm on that data, right, and then explaining the insight. Okay, so that is the domain where you will find a data scientist. But when we actually talk about, we have a data somewhere that we need for data science, but that data is not in the format that we need it. It is not ready for machine learning to be applied on it, right? It's not ready for analysis to be conducted on it. But the data resides somewhere, and we need it here so that we can actually do data science, data analysis on it, right? Then you talk about a data engineer. So they are the ones that actually help in transporting that data from whatsoever source to the destination, right? So you can say that the data engineer feeds the data scientist and the data analyst. So the data analyst primarily focuses on um, using software to extract insights from the data. Talk about softwares like Excel, Power BI, um, and some other software out there, right? They primarily conduct uh, analysis. They build dashboards, in order to be able to show you that, okay, this data that we have, these are the insights that it contains, right? These are the business metrics that we can derive from this data, or that we have derived from this data. Okay, so if you don't pay much attention, currently what is available in the country at the moment is that you actually realize that if you are working as a data scientist, your work is actually going to cut across all of this, because you will actually be expected to, go get the data, do some processing, apply machine learning, then do analysis, right? And it is just simply because the distinction was not called out. Okay, but generally, there is a major difference between data engineering, um, data science, and data analysis. Okay, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I want to believe the person, the participant who asked that question is clear. Is clear enough. Is clear enough. So this question will be directed to our guest facilitator, Mr. Mabuya. So someone is asking, He's saying, is it necessary I get to do certificate? Is it important I get a certificate before venturing into my journey of becoming a cloud engineer?
No.
I believe you
it's
answered
not.
that during the session, so I just want you to reiterate for emphasis purpose.
Yes, no problem. It's not necessary. In fact, a number of engineers that join AWS as a cloud support engineer do not have AWS certification. What we are always keen to know about anyone who is trying to join AWS is first and foremost, if you remember the STAR framework in a sort of interviewing, we'd want to know what is the evidence that shows that you are someone that is involved in tech, and would also want to know what is your potential for AWS to be able to ramp you up and to learn. So it's not required, but we are very, very keen on the behavioral part to know your potential, and on the technical part, we're very, very keen to know what have you done. So as you can imagine, joining AWS it's really hard, and I'm not going to say it's easy. And this is why when I was invited to speak today, I'm happy that I'm just speaking with individuals that are starting out their journey. You certainly want to do as much as you can at this point in time, in as far as getting involved in many projects that would succeed and fail. That is fine, because that is the results that you are going to give in the interview. But as for certification, that is really not entirely required for especially a cloud support engineer, and it wasn't required when I joined AWS as well.
Thank you for that emphasis you laid. Thank you very much. Just to build on what Mr. Mabuya has said, there are technical bases you'll be judged on, and also behavioral competencies also. So you should ensure to balance this off. We've actually shot way over time, and this is the point where I want to say a big thank you to our facilitators for this afternoon session. Can we just use the chat room to say thank you? Thumbs up, a clap, emoji. Just let's just let they've been very resourceful today. Olaniyi, Mabuya, I want to say thank you for coming out to share with us jamming thoughts on how we can actually succeed on this learning path. So this brings us to the end of today's afternoon session. The room will be open tomorrow morning by 10 a.m. as we continue with another round of insightful learning. And we want you to have a good afternoon, have a good evening, wherever you are, whatever part of the world you are. Thank you very much. That will be all for today. Bye, everyone.